to run the new Alberta.
They would beg to negotiate a new deal.
The system could not be fixed.
Responsibility isn't something you outsource.
Alberta could be the new America.
Our next speaker, I think, is well known, CEO of Alberta Prosperity Project and organizer of the referendum initiative. Our next speaker will outline how the process aligns with the Federal Clarity Act and why Albertans must have the democratic right to decide their future. Please welcome Mitch Sylvestre.
Hello, everybody. Hello. How's everybody tonight? Well, I'm telling you, I'm a little bit overwhelmed and actually a little bit embarrassed for what I'm hearing. It surprises me that I was naive enough my whole life to think that Canada was actually working with us. I mean, really. All right. Alberta Prosperity Project is actually what its name intends us to be. We want us to be prosperous. However, we're seeing in live time that that's almost impossible based on what's happening to stop that from happening. I mean, never in my lifetime, as naive as I'm finding out that I am, would I have thought that our federal government would be working against us consciously to hurt our industry. Who would have believed that? Not me, for sure. And now I understand that after April 28th, I had an epiphany. Up until that point, I was an independent Alberta within Canada person thinking that that was actually a possibility. I no longer believe that. And the more information I get, the more and more I believe that there's only one path to this. How can we control all of that stuff that they're talking about out there from here? What choice do we have but to go along with what's happening? We have to localize. We can't deal with that geopolitical stuff because there's no way for us to do it. And understand this. This is their attitude towards us. I've always, since I started this 3 years ago, been wondering who they were. Do you ever wonder who they are? Well, we know one thing about them. They don't like us, right? Understand, they don't like us. So they're telling us that. We'll screw the West. We'll take the rest. And, of course, us being us, we'll say, well, let the Eastern bastards freeze in the dark. And that's kind of our attitude. And so there's been friction between the East and the West for the whole time. Now, we're talking about them taking advantage of Alberta. Alberta is its own deal. Alberta produces a lot, but however, let's look and see how they treat Alberta. Now, Alberta's net contribution to Ottawa, as far as the numbers are concerned, is quite a bit larger than everybody else's, as you can see. They obviously need our money. Look at Quebec at the other end. Benoit identified lots of things that they did very well, but look at the differences. And Quebec's not a have-not province. Quebec's not a have-not province. But understand that the goal of that is to do exactly what they wanted to do, is to keep us poor. Confederation is working exactly the way they want it to work. So on April 28th, when we lost that election, I'm not going to lie to you, I was hoping Pierre was going to win. And I saw that little thing where they pulled him out of there. And it would have made my life quite a bit easier. But it made me realize that something is absolutely true. There is absolutely nothing that we can do unless we do it ourselves. We can't rely on the politician to do it for us. So we're at the stage right now where we're going to make probably the most important, most critical decision, political decision we'll ever make. And it's going to have to be made in the next very short little while here. Canada pension, you will get your pension no matter what happens here. If Alberta leaves Confederation, you will get your pension. Your pension has a portability clause. It's going to follow you wherever you go. And you're also entitled to have more than one passport, so you will retain your Canadian passport. That's two of the big arguments that I hear against an independent Alberta. My question to you is, we have $350 billion, according to the LifeWorks report, in a fund. Why has the Premier not called that back to Alberta? Understand, we're $100 billion in debt. She could just call that back. That's in the CPP Act. The CPP Act says that a Premier can call back the excess contribution that the province makes, and she can call it back with interest anytime she chooses. Now, there's a $350 billion asset there, and the province is $100 billion in debt. What is stopping our government from actually being proactive and making us more independent by doing that very little thing? What's stopping our government from collecting our own taxes? And these are things that are simple as far as I'm personally concerned. Last year, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with the Premier and about the Bill of Rights. And I said, well, you know, Premier, honestly, the grassroots people are not very pleased. And she says, why is everybody so angry? I said, because you're not doing a lot of things that seem to be very easy and things that would benefit Alberta that, as far as we're concerned, are no-brainers. And that's her own words on Alberta Pension. Alberta Pension is a no-brainer. She consciously said that. Now, she's been standing up to Trudeau, and I admire her in many ways, but Trudeau was an easy target. And what I'm seeing is that now that Pierre has lost this election, I believe that our Premier and our government of Alberta was pinning their hopes on the fact that Pierre would win, and then we'd have pipelines going in every direction. I would personally have 2014 gun laws, and everything would be back to normal for a while. But these people are consciously working against us every single day, and we're not like that. We've got elbows up for Canada, but Canada doesn't have elbows up for Alberta. And that's absolutely the way I see it. Now, this is a transfer payment, $13.6 billion to Quebec. Next year, it's the same thing, never changes. We give them $27 billion in 13 months, and we're running deficit budgets. How does that make any sense? It's not fair. And if you're looking at fairness, this is not fair. It's a conscious thing made to make us poorer. Now let's please understand that. I know it's hard to understand that the government of Canada is actually working against us, and never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that they're consciously trying to hurt our economy. Danielle said they are sabotaging our economy, actually, and that's a quote. In his book, Values, our new Prime Minister said that Western society is morally rotten and it has been corrupted by capitalism, which has brought about a climate emergency. And this, he claims, requires rigid controls on personal freedom, industry, and corporate funding. Assets will be stranded, used gasoline-powered cars will be unsaleable. Now just understand, how is that not the front page headline of every newspaper in Canada for 2 months before the election? That's flat out communism. That's what that is. And he's telling us that that's what he's going to do to us. And they're also discussing right now no more gas-powered vehicles in Canada by 2035. So what is that going to mean for you? They don't work here. You can't go anywhere. Do you imagine the infrastructure that's going to have to change to accommodate that? That's 10 years away. Every gas station is going to be no good. They're going to have to replace that with plug-ins. We do not have the infrastructure to plug in every car in Alberta. It's just not possible. So if they continue down that path, you're going to be stuck in your little area. Didn't they predict this? You will own nothing and be happy? My wife said something to me that I would never have thought of in my life. She said, you know, Mitch, there are people out there that will own nothing and be happy. Just not us. So just saying. And it never dawned on me, not for 1 minute. All right, Brookfield. Brookfield has interests in electric cars. They have interests in carbon capture. They have interests in all the things that they're pushing on us. So, understand that used to be against the rules. Understand this, they have no rules. And that's why we can't fix this relationship, because they have no rules. If you're going to take one single thing, they are above the law. Did we elect kings or tyrants? We did not elect those people. That's not what we elected them to be. But since they have no rules, that's exactly what they are. And that's why it cannot be fixed. Right there. If they would live by the laws of the land and common laws, if they hurt people, if they steal money, if they do all that kind of stuff, and they would be held culpable for it, then we could have it. Understand what's at stake here. This is the richest piece of real estate in the world. Europe does not have the resources that we have here. Do you think it's coincidence that Europe is coveting Alberta and Canada? It's not a coincidence at all. Not anymore. China does not have the resources and riches that we have. We have enough oil in the ground to pay the entire US debt right here in Alberta. Just understand how valuable this is. And understand that right now we have a path to actually take advantage of that and change what's going to happen nationally by nationalizing, by becoming independent ourselves and using it to live the lives that we thought we were actually living the whole way, all the way along. When I became Premier, the Premier said this to me. I thought I would fix everything in 6 or 7 months, but everything is broken. That means it cannot be fixed. At that level, when the Premier of Alberta said everything's broken, that means to me that it's too corrupt to fix. That's exactly what that means. So that is our biggest problem right there. That's alluding to the fact that we have these elected people that have no rules and do whatever they want. And we've seen it over and over again, and I'm going to illustrate that here as much as I can. Senator Plett in the middle spends an hour talking to you about liberal corruption. Ethics violations is what they call them. That's the term for crimes. 82 ethics violations where they steal hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars from us with no consequence. So if that's the case, we just re-elected the very same cabinet that the Liberals have had in power for the last 10 years with a more effective leader. Does that not concern you? And moving forward, how much concern, what is going to actually happen? Look what they're already doing. Electric cars, 5% GDP to Europe. Why would we be sending that to Europe? The Americans have been talking to us about 2 or 3% GDP forever. Today, they announced a 5% GDP to them in Europe. That's a long ways from Alberta. The Davidson report. Let's talk about that. Nobody wants to look into that. That's a faux pas. We can't talk about that kind of stuff because, you know, the government did not hurt us during COVID, right? It was a test. COVID was a test. They wanted to test to see how far they could push us. Danielle said, if they don't do this, 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 and this, it's going to affect national unity. And now we're talking about that very thing. We're talking about affecting national unity. That's us. So if we don't stand up and have a group like Alberta Prosperity Project that will threaten national unity, she hasn't got a stick. Right? But the only thing with that is that we have to threaten and even mean it. And that's the real thing that has to come out of this. Everybody has to understand how deathly serious we are. Let's not ignore the last 10 years. I'll help you remember. All government ministers admit COVID restrictions are all about political power and control, not about stopping infection and transmission. Let's talk about censorship. I'm old enough to remember that censorship was something that we never ever thought would happen in Alberta or Canada. Remember this, you don't know what you don't know. And remember this, the people that are going to be hurt the most by censorship is your children, because they're going to be indoctrinating your children and they're going to be giving them the information that they actually want them to have, and that is who is going to be hurt the most on this. And C-293, you know what that is? They're attacking all of our industries. They are going to pass a bill that is going to allow them to go to your farm, seize your land, and seize your herd. Why? How can they give themselves that kind of power? Does it make sense to anybody in the room? All it does is it's going to give them control and the ability to hurt our industry. Another example right here. Canada gets hit with a retaliatory tariff on canola. We put 100% tariff on a Chinese electrical car that nobody knows what the hell it is. So they could turn around and canola and put a tariff on our canola, our peas, our pork, and our seafood, which costs you more money. And it was the intent of it. The intent of it is to hurt you and make you poorer. Plain and simple. There's no other way to explain that. Oil. They're sabotaging our oil industry. Everybody else in the world is producing more oil except us. Bills unique to Alberta. Pipeline bans, tanker bans, oil and gas investment. Everybody says we're landlocked. We're not landlocked, we're policy locked. We're policy locked. Without the government regulations that they have currently in place, Alberta could put a tariff on every train going east or west in the country, and we could negotiate our own pipelines through BC. That's all there is to it. Right now, we can't do it because federal rules don't allow it. $500 billion in lost investment in Alberta. That's a lot of money. That creates a lot of jobs. But that's not the purpose. Trudeau said, that's not in our plan, right? Germany tried to buy natural gas. Japan tried to buy natural gas. Greece tried to buy natural gas. What did Pierre, that's his Freudian slip. Justin, what did he say? He said, no, that's not in our plan. Do you know why? Because it would have created sustainable employment that would have gone year after year after year, and wealth that would have gone on year after year after year. And what they're doing is they're putting carbon capture in, which Brookfield has money invested in. And the carbon capture is going to pull the CO2 out of the air that they can't measure. And then it's going to stick it in the ground, which also can't measure. And they're going to pay themselves $50 billion of our money to do it. All right, that's the refinery I was just talking about. All right, here's where the rubber meets the road. That's where Norway is. Norway came to Alberta to study our oil patch. They have $1.3 trillion in an oil fund. That's a decision that you have to make right now. You have to understand that this is what you're choosing. You're choosing a future for Alberta that will have that kind of oil reserve money available to us, or we're going to go another 25 years and we're going to end up with that. Because that's the choices we're making. We're talking money here. This is a money talk. They're taking our money away from us. They're spending our money. We don't know who they are. We don't even like them, and we're letting them do it. And that's not all. They're capping the industry. So not only are they stopping the production, they're killing the cow. Again, what's the purpose? To make you poorer. That is all it could possibly be. There's no other reason for it. Here's one of my favorite slides. Carbon taxes cost Canadians billions of dollars over 5 years, hurting the economy while reducing CO2 emissions by 11.9 gigatons. China emits 11.9 gigatons of CO2 every day and a half. Okay? And they increase their CO2 production by 10% every year. Oh, and then the fires. Just understand that most of them are man-caused by people. Manitoba confirms 100 out of 111 are confirmed, said by people, not climate change. Here's my favorite slide. This is the taxes we pay. Carbon tax, personal income tax, corporate income tax, goods and services tax, excise taxes, fuel excise tax, alcohol excise duty, tobacco excise duty, cannabis excise duty, customs duties, air travelers tax, luxury tax, provincial territorial tax, capital gains tax, land transfer tax, media tax, regulation tax, CPP tax, business tax, estate tax, and now they want to tax your homes that are paid for. Do you understand how estate tax works? If your parents paid $200,000 for a home and they die, and the home is worth $1 million, you pay 65% tax on the difference, on the $800,000. 65%. How's that work? Just understand that, 65% on the difference. So what's the purpose of that? They don't want you to transfer your wealth down to your kids. That's plain and simple what it is. That's all it is. In a free and independent Alberta, we're talking about a business plan. We could talk about a flat 12% tax for everybody. That would, you wouldn't have to pay an income tax, consumption tax of 12%. And when they do give us money, they give it to all these people, all corrupt nations. I'm going to go by a couple slides. Okay, let's look at this. One more thing on the money. Audit of $187 billion worth of Liberal infrastructure finds 20,000 missing projects. So they're also stealing it. And that's part of the fact that what we're discussing, that there is no accountability for these people. They didn't even look into it. Mark Carney said, we've had an election. Don't worry about that stuff that happened last year and the year before. Don't worry about it. That's the way it works. Here's the last thing I'm going to talk to you about. Doug Ford had his house broken into when he was in it. Now he's all about guns. You should be allowed to shoot criminals who break into your home. Right? Got it, boy. I love that. Here's the way the communists look at guns. All political power comes from the barrel of a gun. The Communist Party must command all the guns. That way no guns can ever be used to command the party. So they're actually chasing you down for your guns. They've got a minister that's going to come to your homes and get your guns. And this is the way, I'm going to finish with this. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that is the way we're going to run the new Alberta. Thank you very much.
We sent our best people to Ottawa to fix the system, but the system could not be fixed.
They will beg to come sit at our table to negotiate a new deal.
And that is the way we're going to run the new Alberta.
Yet successive governments, blue or orange, have not done them.
About $1 billion a week on interest payments on the national debt.
It was inserted to bring about a technocratic overhaul of our government. We're actually all on the same page for now in trying to pursue the same policies that will improve fairness for Alberta.
Responsibility isn't something you outsource.
And complete control of our own destiny here in Alberta.
They don't want to make change now that they know that they can do. Alberta could be the new America.